Hey you! Yeah, you! Don't you just wish you got carpal tunnel syndrome, but the time it takes to get it is simply far too long? Well, don't you worry anymore, little one. I got just a solution for you. If you sign yourself up as a healer, your main job will be to force feed the enemies with poison. As a healer? Yeah. I hope whoever made BA never gets a job in the healthcare system. Anyway, being a healer in Barbarian Assault is kind of like being a prince or princess. In any average team, everyone else should be doing their best to make your job easier, to pamper you with lures and stores. So, in order to stop you running around like a headless chicken, let me show you how to be a healer in Barbarian Assault. Since the role shares the same title as enemies you'd have to kill, I will refer to the player as Healer Player. Or other instances of Healer will refer to the Penance Healer instead. The Healer role in Barbarian Assault has two main tasks: kill the Penance Healers and keep your team alive. For the most part, your teammates will, for some strange reason, try to stay alive without your help. It's like they don't even want to die or something. This means that killing healers take priority. Healers get more hit points as you progress through the waves, making them normally the last to be killed past wave 4. In order to be a decent healer player, you'd have to take into mind a few core concepts. Number 1. You need to have a free inventory. Once you spawn into the wave, you'll be given a horn and, after taking from the dispensers, a vial to heal others with. This means you have 26 inventory slots to work with, dividing into 9 tofu, 9 worms, and 8 meats if you chose the stock ore option. The less inventory slots you have, the less food you can utilize before you have to run all the way back south, affecting your overall speed. Number 2. Be light on your feet, because if you're carrying a lot of weight, like wearing full bandos with a thin shield, you'll be running out of energy before you reach the Penance Healers. You don't need heavy armor since most of the damage dealing fighters and rangers shouldn't reach the east side where you are. Lightweight fashionscape makes you a better healer, even if you wear nothing. This is a proven scientific fact. Number 3. The sequence of actions you take matters. You don't need to fill the vial in the early waves, as nobody should be weak enough to require any healing that early. Typically, the waves you want to pay attention to for healing would be 7 and onwards, though I'd suggest not to fill the vial at the beginning. Instead, fill it as you return to the dispensers after using your initial inventory of food. As a healer player, you should be taking food from the dispensers immediately after spawning. Run east of the east cannon and poison the healers as they spawn. Exceptions include low health teammates, leech run vialing strategies, and idiotic low combat morons standing in the middle of the room tanking literally everything and wondering why they're dying so quickly. Number 4. A healer player needs to understand how their damage works. By applying a certain type of food on a healer, it will begin taking 4 poison damage at 3-second intervals, slowly deteriorating in potency, dealing a maximum of 54 damage. Long story short, you deal damage over time, so utilize time to your advantage as much as possible. The general idea is to spread the poison to each individual healer. It's useless for you to use every food onto 1 or 2 healers and leaving multiple full health healers roaming about like a tourist group. If you poison them at least once each, they will all continuously take damage, making it easier to eliminate them later. However, one must also understand that certain waves will have healer reserves. These are penance healers that won't spawn until an existing healer is dead. For example, wave 3 will spawn 3 total healers, 2 initially, and 1 as a reserve. You must kill at least 1 healer in order to get the 3rd healer spawning. Under these circumstances, you'd want to spread your poison, but spam any leftovers on the singular healer, normally the 2nd healer, to make sure the reserve healers are spawned early rather than late. Reserve healers are essentially invincible until they spawn and you apply your first poison on it, so that will add a lot of time to your run if not dealt with swiftly. If you do need to heal someone, use the vial you get from the dispensers on the green pool to the west. Or right click on the pool and select the fill vial option. Then use the vial on your teammate. If you need to heal yourself, shove your head down the pool and take a gulp, depositing your saliva and germs into the cesspool of healer players spit from generations before, and enjoy the Bacteria Festival. I know it's pretty confusing, so here's a quick summary. Poison each healer at least once, so they all take damage simultaneously. And be mindful that as the wave number goes higher, so does the amount of health the healers have. The amount of healers and reserves are different each wave, and it's helpful to either have a cheat sheet or memorize how many healers you have to handle each wave. Keep an eye on your teammates' health, in particular the west players, attackers and collectors. It's faster to take the trip down to the pool for healing. than to restart the entire wave because someone died. That being said, don't vial at the beginning, but wait until it's absolutely necessary or when you're returning to the dispensers anyway. You'd want to be on the east side of the room as much as possible to keep the healers there. If they start wandering, you'll end up bouncing around everywhere like a squash ball. Alright, I know it's a lot to take in, but it's important to understand both the strategies and the reasonings behind them. So now that you know what to do, let's talk about where you need to be, so you and the defender don't go batshit crazy. First of all, make sure your team understands the golden rule of BA. If any of them runs down the middle, give them a well-deserved smack at the back of the head, preferably with a sledgehammer. If a West player attracts a healer aggro, you will have full legal right to pour the content of your vial onto the ground, as they are mauled to death by the penance monsters. There are 3 main occasions where a healer might be lured away. An attacker or collector crosses the aggro range at the wrong timing, when a defender pulls a healer up to the locks and hammer, or when a healer poisons a player and there's no runners in sight so it wanders away. Normally, we term this as going Narnia, in which case you will have to decide whether or not to chase them and risk losing time on freshly spawned healers, which is not always the best idea to do on wave 8 and 9. You could also ignore them and hope they return to the east side later. As you gain more experience with BA, you will develop better decision making, like resetting the wave and raging the hell out of Iron Jesus trolling you. The first scenario shouldn't happen if the attacker and collector knows their shit. The second scenario shouldn't happen if the defender knows how to delay wave 5 onwards and lose the third healer aggro. If they don't, you could try and teach them, but it might be less destructive to your hair and forehead if you simply dealt with it the best you can. The third scenario will happen occasionally in various ways. For example, if the first healer is attracted to the defender, who is ahead of you, and is too far to see the freshly spawned runners, it continues south into Narnia. There's no perfect solution to this. Bad spreads happen and will continue to happen. How to recover from a bad spread is a good indicator that separates a decent healer player to a good one. Now, let me talk a little bit about spamming in solid tiles. You may have heard a defender asking you to not run through his tile. Normally, we call that phasing, also known as Raste on wave 7 with a shitty pathing. When a player stands still on a tile, that tile becomes solid, meaning monsters will be blocked by you. This is incredibly useful for the defender and healer player. For example, if a healer is targeting a teammate, you could stand in between them like a clock blocking emote from every fucking anime ever. You would then block the healer's movement, causing us to stand still, and this is important. I'll get to that later. Defenders often stand on the tile north of the trap, blocking his runners until you can kill them at the opportune time. If you run into and out of his tile, then the tile is phased. All the NPCs will be able to walk through the defender either field he placed. Keyword here is that you'd have to leave the tile after entering to cause a phase. So, if you end up accidentally standing on the same tile with the defender, you could dampen the vengeful spirit by standing still until the defender moves before carrying on like nothing happened. So why is this important to the healer? If a healer is moving, your character has to move along with it. This is at minimum a 2-tick process, one to move, the other to apply poison. However, if the healer is standing still because it's blocked by a player or terrain, you could actually poison it every single tick, essentially doubling your attack speed. This is called, as you can guess from the name, spamming. Hence why efficient healers are all try-hard OC players with a minimum of 3 mutated nerves on the index fingers like Hulk's hard-on. The best place to stand in order to block newly spawned healers is here. When the healer spawns, wait 1 tick, then use your food on it as it walks east. If the healer aggroes onto you, you won't need to move. If the healer aggroes onto the defender, you slide east along with it, blocking it from moving. This is extremely helpful to get into the habit of, as it allows you to guess food at the core change to ensure you poison a freshly spawned healer before 3 seconds has passed. Honestly speaking, the things I've spoken about so far may be simple when tackled individually, but incredibly overwhelming once you're in the wave, facing against the monsters, the timer, and even worse, your teammates' silent judgment. Veteran healer players might scoff at all of this, but that's only because they already do these steps subconsciously through muscle memory. Worst of all, being able to think about all these steps throughout the wave isn't actually the major factor to a fast run. Their purpose is to support you applying the healer codes on time, so let's talk a little bit about that. I'm only going to briefly introduce the healer codes and how to interpret them. There exists an incredibly detailed guide compiled by Ellie, or Eli, I'm not very good with names, which is complete with explanations, tips, and expectation with video examples as well. The reason why I want to keep this simple is because I'm a lazy piece of shit, but mostly because the videos already became more potent than the dream spell from Lunas. I'll give a brief explanation of what these numbers mean and how to start learning them. First of all, what are regs and OS? Regs is short for regular, meaning use the stock or option at the beginning of the wave. Your usage of your resources will be based around that. On the other hand, OS stands for overstock, where the defender calls immediately upon spawning into the wave, which allows you to grab more of the called food. 1 OS would mean you take an additional 5 food before stocking all. This will give you 12 called food and 7 of the others, totaling 26. 2 OS naturally signifies the need to stock the called food twice before stocking all, providing 16, 5 and 5 if tofu, or 15, 6 and 5 if meat or worms. Why does this matter? Well, as you may recall, reserve healers won't spawn until an existing healer has died. If you're able to use more food during the first call, you can potentially force the reserves to spawn earlier. The earlier they spawn, the sooner you can poison them, and the quicker the round ends. However, this isn't easy to do. The defender has to call quickly, and you have limited time to stock to get to the first healer in time. So, instead of worrying about this, let me show you the regular codes and how to interpret them. Let's start with wave 6. Each number is separated by a hyphen, representing the order of healers that spawn. The first number naturally refers to the first healer that spawns, and the value of the number shows how many food to use. Each sector represents a call duration, meaning every 30 seconds into the wave. Your required food will change. The number in the brackets denote the time for repoisoning. 2 brackets 18 would mean to apply poison on a healer once, then apply again after 18 seconds into the wave, or 12 seconds as shown by the runelight timer. Rather than think about the seconds, it may be easier to remind yourself that since every healer spawns at 6-second intervals, once the third healer spawns, then you should repoison the first healer. RS stands for restock, meaning you need to run back to the dispenser and gather food. It's good practice to shift click the remaining food and choose the stock all option so that you have an even amount of food again. Even better yet, try and begin your journey south early and wait for the call to change. Then manually select the correct food so that you have more to use. As you can see, most waves won't require more than 1 restock. There are more advanced restock types, like 1313, 1510 or even Alcon restocks. Good luck and have fun with those. There are also variations on regular stocks as well. The one I provide may not necessarily be the most optimal, but in my opinion it's the most beginner friendly to use. That's enough talking from me. Here's an example of a regular wave 6. And here is an example of a double overstock wave 7 by Ryan. If there is a song that represents how I feel about a healer role, it'll be the one you're listening to right now. To progress further, you need to be able to feel the rhythm and momentum. The situation you'll be facing changes abruptly at every turn, so fixating yourself onto the exact same line of thinking won't help you all the time. Whilst it's good to know all the precise seconds and timings, understanding the fundamentals of why it works is much more important. Your run will be as unpredictable as the NFT market. Things tend to only make sense in hindsight. What you need to do is to hone your ability to adapt. Should you chase the healer west? Should you focus on the repoison or a fresh healer? Will you face the defender because he lured the healer a bit too close to the logs than you'd like? The difficulty of these questions will depend on the person. This role is like balancing on a rope of anxiety, not knowing when and where you're being shoved to. Just like this nested triplet dubstep, making no sense yet keeping yourself in the flow. But when the team works there and the things work out, it's an amazing, magical feeling. If you want to become a good healer, then begin by using regular codes. Try to keep in mind your positioning, the timing of the spawns, and the method of limiting healer spread. Remember, you need to get the reserve spawned in order to complete the waves quicker. There's no use of having 4 healers dying at around the same time, wasting all your food just so that an extra 3 healers can spawn. Not only does that take up to 18 seconds of time, but you also probably have no food to deal with them by then. Strive to understand why you're putting X amount of food on each healer. When does that healer die? How does that affect the reserve spawn timings? Why the fuck is World 306 so laggy that my character doesn't fucking move after 5 seconds? You are the dancer to a rhythm. Be careful not to fall off the stage and keep yourself in rhythm, but also know that the rhythm isn't always as straightforward as a 4/4 beat. If in doubt, blame the defender, because the defender is the one that conducts the rhythm.